Hello. I was going to do a video at the end of the 4 p.m. turn, but actually I've reached the end of the 3 p.m. turn, and I've decided to do one now, partly because what's been happening on the map's quite exciting, and secondly because I've introduced a house rule courtesy of a chap Richard on Board Game Geek, vis-a-vis the introduction of Delon into the game, and because that starts at the end of the 3 p.m. turn, I thought it would be a timely video to do, to explain exactly what that optional rule is, having had the OK from the author to do so. So I'll do a quick sort of verbal of what's happening game-wise, and then I'll go on to show the map and explain the optional rule. So the game starts at 2 p.m. on the Quatre map and at 3 p.m. on the Ligny map. So obviously it's an earlier start on the left, and as happened on my playthrough of Quatre on its own, Rai was still having his croissant cafe and refused to get going on the 2 p.m. turn. I think he had one activation rather than two, so he's a bit slow out of the blocks, but more than made up for it on the 3 p.m. turn, where he's really got stuck into Péponché. They've captured the farm at Gimignoncourt, and I think the Anglo allies are in a bit of a pickle, really. I mean, Picton's got Péponché's back, but who's got Picton's back? The Brunswickers are marching towards Thiel, because you could do a feint with part of the second corps, and when the Brunswickers come on you have to decide on their orders, and I played it as I would if I was playing it face to face, trying to cover that threat to Thiel, because that means you can get on the road between Thiel and Quatre and score points. But as it was, the division that was going that way on the second corps went back and attacked the line around the farm at Gimignoncourt. So that's been interesting. Quite light losses for the French. Thought about using the Guard cavalry, but just shied away from it because of the penalty if you suffer a loss. Decided that the sort of risk, sort of a reward analysis didn't really work out in their favour. So meanwhile, an hour later at Ligny, that battle started. Gerard's making very hard work of Ligny. They've suffered some losses, and the Prussians still hold the strategic points in Ligny, so that's going to cost the French a few VPs. And Van Damme was more successful in Saint-Amand, but it was only the intervention of Napoleon, using his personal powers of direction. You can activate a number of stacks equal to the leader's rating, and you can do that once per game turn. So he was able to sort of reinvigorate 3 stacks to get them to have one last go at the flag hex in Saint-Amand, which they managed to capture, which the Prussians thought they had secured for at least one more turn. They had a choice of either wanting to retreat or taking a loss and staying put, and they thought, well, we'll take the loss, we'll stay put, because that could be worth 10 victory points. But then that was all to naught, because they were evicted unceremoniously by the French troops that were inspired by their emperor. And on the extreme right, Pujol has moved up to try and threaten the supply route to Namur on the road. So some of Tillman's third corps have had to move independently to try and cover that threat, while the rest of the corps heads down to threaten Girard's right flank. And the Guard moved a little bit up towards to fill the middle ground between Ligny and Saint-Amand. So good stuff. So Dernlon, the dilemma is that in this campaign game 2 is the combination of the Ligny scenario 4 with Quatre scenario 2. Now in Ligny scenario 4 you use variant cards, and there's a choice of 3 and you pick one. You don't pick one in the Quatre scenario 2. So I sort of thought that you would choose a variant card, but only on the Ligny part of the map. So the von Bullau card was the card I was going to use, which would give a -3, i.e. more likely for von Bullau to enter. So, but I just questioned it on Board Game Geek. In fact, got an answer from the designer, so that comes from a good source. And the answer was I wouldn't use any variant cards in the campaign game 2. So variant cards are out, which is good to know. Nothing had been affected by them at that point. And I got on to thinking about Dernlon and his entry in the game. And in the scenario 4 on Ligny, they enter on the Charleroi road, which is not far from the entry point on the Quatre map, actually, if you're playing the Quatre scenario. But it's much more expensive to get Dernlon onto the Ligny map. So you think, well, I would just bring them on the Quatre map, pay the smaller penalty, and then move them just across onto the Ligny map. Might cost you a turn, but it seemed a bit strange. And then I read that actually Flores is the entry point if you're playing the campaign game for Dernlon's Corps. If you go for that optional variant, going for those reinforcements. So I think the feeling is that's done for sort of play balance reasons, because it gets them more into the action sooner, so it means that the VP cost is more justified. And I can see that, but I don't think that Dernlon was anywhere near coming on just south of Flores. So there was some chat about that on BGG. And Richard, one of the guys, said, well, I actually use a house rule for Dernlon, trying to follow a bit more of the historical flavour. I said, oh, what's the rule if you want to share? And he said, yeah, sure. So he sent me the rule, and essentially, at the end of the 3 PM turn, i.e. now, in my game, you take the 3 Dernlon first corps markers, 2 decoy, 1 real, mix them up, 1 gets discarded, so that might be the real one, you don't know. And then each turn you roll the entry for the other 2 markers, 1 for Quatre and 1 for Ligny. And if successful, you move them still hidden side up, unbeknown to either player, along various defined routes. So that means that no one knows if Dernlon's coming, and if he is, which map he's going to enter. And I think that's quite a nice way of trying to represent that uncertainty. If he is spotted, if it is a real one, they have to deploy when they get to their order point. And then once you're spotted or you deploy, you get penalised for the points dependent on the game turn and which map you're on. So that's That's quite a good way of doing it. Now I've just done that and I've discarded one, and the Quatre one didn't come on, but the one on the Ligny map did, and you basically roll a sort of 2d6, and that's as far as you move it, and those markers only move at the end of game turn segment, so it moves 7 hexes, which is about 2 impulses anyway, so that's good, quite like it. Thanks to Richard for that and for letting me share it and use it. Right, I think that'll do. I'm just going to show you as well, I mean everyone's got their own way of doing the activation chits. I like to keep mine off the map. I think the map looks quite attractive. I don't really want it covered with plain counters, so I could show you how I keep track of the activations and who is eligible. I mean you're not eligible to be moved onto successive activations for a force commander, so you have to move someone else or pass, and then you can come back to that same officer or formation leader later, or commander. So I'll show you how I mark those up. Okay, I'll show you the map. So here's the situation on the map. You can see that the position that was held by the by Peponche's Dutch-Belgian, that position has pretty much fallen apart. Rise Corps has made good progress now. They've captured the farm at Jumièges. There's a few of the Dutch-Belgian troops that are routing up the Brussels highway. Orange and Wellington will try and rally those next turn. There's been a few French losses, but relatively light, certainly in comparison with the Allied losses. Picton's moving up behind Peponche. We'll try and form a line and await further troops. The Brunswickers have moved towards Thiel with their orders. There's some more just under those British troops there. And then there's the Dutch-Belgian cavalry commander. We're trying to get the rest of his troops on as well, actually. I think the commander changes if they come on, but there's about 6 more units of that formation which may appear, which will probably be well needed by then. There's Kellerman, who was threatening with one of the divisions of 2nd Corps, which will turn out to be a feint. So the situation's quite well placed there for the French, I think, at Quatre at the moment. One of the Derlon 1st Corps markers that didn't move anywhere, and here's the one on the Ligny map. You can see these 2 roads, sort of here and here, are the 2 that would normally come on scenario 2 for Quatre, scenario 4 for Ligny, but actually in the campaign game you come to Flores and the 1st Corps would come on there, so a bit of a stretch, I think, done for play balance reasons, as already mentioned. So in the game I had, the one of the markers did move up the road with the sort of 2d6, 7 hexes I got. So is that Derlon? I don't know. The French and the Dutch-Belgian players wouldn't know, and they're tasked with moving up to Ancienne Usine de Chazart, which is here when they will deploy or just disappear from the map. So there'll be a bit of excitement there. I think that's quite a nice implementation of the uncertainty, and of course by then the second one down here may have moved as well, so we'll find out. Try and not reveal it before the correct time. So over here we've got Van Damme, he's pushed into Saint-Amand. They're taking both their activations. As mentioned, the Prussians decided to hold on to the flag and take a loss with the hope of getting 10 VPs, but Napoleon was able to activate three stacks within command range, launched a last-ditch effort, and took the flag. So that's a good bit of success there for Third Corps, which compares favourably to Gérard's lack of progress at Ligny itself. The Prussians pretty stubborn in their defence. I think they're struggling a bit. In fact, the Prussian line there looks quite solid, although the Guard is now moving up to the centre. Milhaud had a single strategic activation, which was their only move that turn. Exelmans has moved up to support this flank of Gérard because of the threat from Tillman's Third Corps, and Pujol moved across to his ordered location and is now waiting fresh orders, whereas these guys from Prussian Third Corps had to move independently to try and cover the threat to the supply on the road to Namur. So quite a lot happened for one turn on the Ligny map. It's quite exciting. Now I'm just going to show what I do for formation activation. So you notice there were no activation chits on the map. I mean, if there were, you'd be putting one on top of the commander, and maybe if he's activated, then you put it underneath for the next turn, or you put it to the side. But eventually, you could end up with quite a few of these markers dotted around the map. So to show if somebody is eligible, what I do is I use the rosters. Just find a bit of space where there's not too much reflection. So if I wanted to use Brunswick, for example, I would mark him, bang. So he's the guy who was last activated. Then on the next Allied go, I know I can't use Brunswick because he's covered up, but I could use Picton because he is currently eligible. So if I roll an 8 or less, I can use Picton and I would uncover Brunswick. And now I know I could pick him next time. If I then pick someone else, of course, maybe I would choose, I don't know, Uxbridge, say, and then Uxbridge would be chosen, which would reveal Picton. And on the following turn I've got a choice of anyone else from other commanders, or I could attempt Brunswick or Picton's second activation. I went for Brunswick, and then he'd be finished, and I could leave that on there. So if you've got space for these order of battle cards on your table, I just think it gives a cleaner look to the game on the map, and you can see at a glance, who's available and who's not available. It's a personal thing, but I think it just maintains what I think is a very attractive game, at its peak of sort of good looks, really. That was one of my issues I had with the La Bataille, was they had lovely counters on the front side, but all the skirmishers and the artillery used to flip over, and they were just sort of black lettering on a white background, so quite a high proportion of the map was just essentially covered in black and white counters, which I never quite understood that particular graphic choice. Anyhow, I digress. The game will continue.